entirely sure we could hear you, but I believe
That's all right.
we can.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, what in essence, one of the clear things coming out from here is that there was, as Laura says, that clear underlying view at Westminster that Abdulbasit al-Megrahi should be released. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I think you can take it that the Scottish Government is going to feel a bit vindicated from the Cabinet Secretary's report. The big news, of course, is that the Cabinet Secretary has found that at the autumn of 2008, the UK government, the Labour government, changed its position, and that every area of government were attempting to facilitate the release of Mr al-Megrahi to go back home to Libya. Now, they did that for geopolitical, for economic reasons. They thought they had good reasons for doing it. And my complaint is not about that, incidentally. They were entitled to hold that as a policy. I suppose the issue I would raise is when Mr Megrahi was released, according to due process in Scotland, not regarding any of these matters, but on judicial principles, when he was released a year later, then Gordon Brown was absolutely silent, and the Labour Party in Scotland mounted a series of vicious attacks on the SNP government. It seems to me the greatest example of organised political hypocrisy that I've ever seen in my time in politics.
And those vicious attacks, as you call them, is your contention that that was to try to distract from any conversations, any pressure that may have come from Westminster? Because the public line was always that it was absolutely up to Edinburgh.
Well, I've never argued there was pressure on us from the UK government. I mean, we wouldn't have taken any pressure. I mean, we knew what their attitude was, incidentally, and I've said so a number of times. Now we've had it confirmed, and from the Cabinet Secretary. But the point I'm making is that we had all sorts of representations from the American government, the Libyan government, a whole range of interests. That's fair enough in a process, a quasi-judicial process. But what the Cabinet Secretary also finds, of course, is that we made our decision on the principles of Scots law and practice and on no other consideration. Now, that was the line we've maintained in public. That's what we did in private. My point is of the extraordinary position of the Labour Party in Scotland attacking the SNP government for doing, according to judicial principles, what the Labour government in London were wanting to do, although not saying it openly, for economic and political reasons. That does seem to me totally and utterly extraordinary, and I just don't think anybody anywhere will ever believe anything the Labour Party has to say ever again.
Will there be some people who will say, actually, that is realpolitik? That's how it is. We all know that's how it is.
Well, is it? I mean, you see, my view is, and the Scottish Government's view, and the reason that Kenny McCaskill addressed the matter in the way he was, when you come to an extraordinarily difficult and controversial decision such as the issues of prisoner transfer and compassionate release that the Scottish Government were presented with in the summer of 2009, then you shouldn't make these decisions based on politics or economics or geopolitics. You should make it on legal principles. And that's what we did. Now, the Labour government wanted to do it on politics, although I don't argue they pressurised us, because they didn't. The Conservative government as now, David Cameron, would have said we should have turned it down for presumably political reasons. I think it's actually better, and perhaps if the current Prime Minister ever has to face a decision such as this, to actually try and do it on the basis of the legal principles and what is in your judicial system. I think that's the right way to behave. And, I've never asked as First Minister of Scotland everybody to agree with the decision we made. I merely asked them to accept that we did it on due process of Scots law. We did it for the right reasons. And the Cabinet Secretary's report, of course, vindicates the Scottish Government totally on that point.
And do you have any concerns, though, that though, of course, you sit there, you said you did it for the right reason through the right processes, that argument to the Americans, where we know there has been so much anger, that gets a little tougher for you to explain and for you to reiterate to the angry American relatives, because they might look to these documents today and say, but this is what they wanted in Westminster. How can we believe that you weren't put under any pressure?
Well, my attitude is twofold. One, if we're talking about American relatives, or for that matter, UK relatives, I mean, people who are bereaved and lost loved ones in the Lockerbie atrocity have every right to question and be as vehement, and I've never at any stage in this suggested that people didn't have an absolute right and that was proper to do, and I'm totally understanding of that. Some American politicians, I think, take a totally different attitude, and perhaps they should be looking at the passages in the Cabinet Secretary's report which indicate, for example, that the United States government, while opposed to Mr Megrahi's release full stop, actually indicated that they would prefer a release on compassionate grounds than to the prisoner transfer. There's also been the whole WikiLeaks correspondence released, which indicates by the autumn of 2008, the American government at least knew full well what was in the United Kingdom government's mind, that they were favourable to the release of Mr al-Megrahi. So perhaps some American senators should start questioning their own government as opposed to questioning the bona fides of the Scottish government.
In just one sentence, was it still the right decision given that Abdel Basset al-Megrahi is still alive today?
I think Kenny McCaskill took an extraordinarily difficult decision. I think it was the right decision, and I think above all, and this is the point which is vindicated today, he made it for the right reasons.
Alex Salmond, many thanks for being with us. Thank you.
Great pleasure, thank you.
Just gone a quarter to, let's